Good morning, everyone, and thank you for attending today's second session of the OT Solex Partners Expo, our special EMEA edition. Some familiar faces joining us this morning. Thank you very much. We will get started right away just for time, and the session will be recorded as well for anybody who wants to access it after. I will edit the questions at the end in case anybody wants to chime in with a question verbally. I will cut it, post edit, and the session will be available on our YouTube channel as well as the other sessions. So thank you for joining us again. My name is Sean Murphy. I'm the sales director for Cassia Content Management. We are based in Ottawa, Canada. We have been a OpenText technology partner and solution extension partner since 2011. And our partners of the company are actually all ex-OpenText employees who, after their stint with OpenText, did some independent consulting. And during their time doing independent consulting, they saw some opportunities to extend some of the OpenText products, specifically Content Server, and specifically in this case to the language capabilities of Content Server. Us being, of course, based in Canada. Canada is a bilingual country with French and English requirements, and because of that, we ended up building this product called OpenText Translator for Content Suite, which is in actually the government of Canada. And we'll talk about how we're going to leverage language capabilities of your OpenText investment. First, just to let you know, if you see any reference to the enhanced multilingual capabilities module, which is a mouthful, that is the old naming convention of our product. If you do see any of that, just know that it is one and the same. We have rebranded the product. It is now called the OpenText Translator for Content Suite. So the genesis, of course, of this product is to extend and enhance the language capabilities of your OpenText investment, mainly around language compliance. So for those who have to have users work in one language and only one language, so that's reference to the government of Canada, of course. And as well as what do we do when we have assets in multiple languages? How do we access that information? How do we search that information? And then once we have that information, how do we view that information if it's not in the language of the user, if it's a foreign language? And then how do we collaborate with other users who are working in different languages with the same assets? So we'll address all of those today. We'll also talk about some of the new features of our product, the roadmap for the next 2 years for our product, as well as some big news. We have a new pricing model for the module. So previously our model was priced per user, and now our product is priced per instance, which is significantly more attractive, certainly for larger deployments with a large user base for a content server. So we'll talk about that as well. And then we'll have some questions and answers at the end. So let's dive right in. We typically demo 3 areas of our product. The first being addressing the user interface. So for user adoption, what happens when we have to have some language compliance? So specifically, let's say for Canada, for example, when we had to have language compliance for French users. French users needed to work in French and only French. English users needed to work in English and only English. So out of the box, currently with Content Server, OpenText has enabled some multilingual capabilities. So out of the box, Content Server, you now have the ability through language packs to have menus, buttons, object names and descriptions, for example. But what we've done is with CASI, we've extended the capabilities even further to include attribute names and values, and pretty much any areas we could extend multilingualization, I don't know if that's a word, we've done that. So here's an excellent example of the classic UI. I'll show you the smart UI as well for, let's say, the government of Canada, where we have just two languages in this case. But you can imagine if we had even more languages, what would happen here. So we have, in this example, we have English and French. We have titles of our file names of our product in a mix of English and French. We have some facets on the left here with French and English. We have some columns and column information in English and in French. And you can see the current kind of workaround when we're dealing with more than one language is to include both languages. So here we have French/English or English/French. So the problem is, you can see right away, is we have some truncation issues where some of the content might be cut off. And this information is designed to help the user, drill down and find information easier. If we have these truncation issues and the user doesn't speak that language, we're going to run into some user adoption issues. And you can imagine what it would look like if you had more than two languages. And we run into an issue of, well, what languages do we put, in this case, what language do we put first? Do we put French first? Are we offending our English users? Do we put English first? Are we offending our French users? So you can see once we have the OpenText Translator module installed, again, this is the classic UI. We'll show you the smart UI in a second. We have, as an English user, we have now just English and only English. And we have columns in English and only English. If we switch our language to French, which I will do, sorry for all the clicking around. Now in this example, I have a ton of languages in our demo, but you may only have a couple of languages. Refresh my screen for French. So we're looking at exactly the same content, but now all of our metadata and columns and facets are in French and only French. And that's not to say that the document itself might be in a different language. The document itself may well be in English or another language, but the titles of the document, when we're looking at the interface, your users are looking in their language and only their language, and they're looking at the same content that an English user would look at, or another language. And I'm going to switch it back to English, but I'll show you the smart UI as well. So again, you can see I'm an English user. I'm in a smart UI environment now, and it's English and only French. And in the French, if we switch our language to French, we will be looking at this in French and only French as well. So this is out of the box functionality with our OpenText Translator solution extension. You're able to add that content, the facets, and you would add that in this case manually, or you could use assisted translation using machine translation, which I'll demonstrate as well. We're just going to look at some of the functionality that from an end user would see. So you can see here we've added these globe icons. We've kind of added the the same look and feel as out of the box content server. I can add my English content here and the content for all the languages defined in your system. You may just have English and French. This is a crazy demo system with a crazy amount of languages, but you can see we would only have English and French. So you could free text that as well, add that into French, or we can use some of the assisted enhanced capabilities, and those capabilities leverage machine translation. So this would be something that you would connect to. So this would be third party, not included with the product, but you could connect with Google Translate or Microsoft Translate. Right now, we also partner with RWS and Systran, and what that would look like. Um, uh, let's say you wanted to you could just add your English content. We could also just translate it on the fly. You could either type this in manually, or we can leverage the machine translation and we'd go and manually change that. So we use a table. We create new tables. So a big question that comes up a lot is, do you need to do a category upgrade when we install our product? And you do not. You can we basically just create new tables for all the different languages, and once that information is there, it shows immediately. So there's no need for a category grading. So some of the other features that the product has that we demonstrate are this idea of assisted translated search. So this is also leveraging third-party machine translation. So let's say that we have, we have assets in multiple languages. So out of the box right now, you would have to do a search in each one of those languages, which could be time consuming and it's not efficient. Things for like, records disposition, anything like that, it's going to require more than one search. So here I'm going to do a search for the keyword safety report. So this is just a standard out of the box open text search for safety report. It's going to go out and it's going to find me, bring me back these three results from the word safety reports. But I'm pretty sure I have more content, but it's in different languages. So what we've done is we've added this button called Include Automatic Translations. So now what's going to happen, it's going to go and take these keywords and go and translate them into all the languages I have defined in our system and then provide me those results. So in this case, you saw that we previously had 3 results returned. Now we have much, much more because it's gone and translated those. And to show you what's happened under the covers, you can see that it's gone and translated safety report into all the languages defined in our system. And you could do a search for within content of documents itself as well. So you can imagine, trying to find assets in, especially if you had more than 2 languages, how tedious that would be, and how many searches you would have to run to find all of your assets. And you can think of the risk mitigation involved in, maybe destroying, documents or archiving documents for a specific, company, or any kind of use case where you had to find all of your assets for a particular disposition that required a search for multiple languages. And the last thing we would demonstrate is this idea of content preview. So let's take that same scenario as a safety report where an end user gets a document and they can't read it. It's in a foreign language and they're not sure if they need to action it. So let's say that your records manager is sending you a document for safety report and wants to know if this needs to be actioned, and you get this document, you're not sure what it says. Maybe you don't even maybe you don't even know that it's in Chinese. It's in Chinese in this case, but maybe you don't know that. Maybe the publisher of this document is based in Hong Kong and it's after hours, you can't connect with them, or maybe that user doesn't speak your language as well. So there's a lot of back and forth and inefficiencies around connecting around this document when the two users don't speak the same language. So with our module in place of leveraging machine translation again, what I can do is I can translate this document into into my language. So this is giving me an HTML rendered view of this document. So it's not creating a new document or a new record at all. And now I can see, okay, this is a food safety report. Maybe that was a false positive. Maybe I don't need to action it because it's a food safety report, or maybe I do. So the idea of this is not to replace professional translation. It is simply to be able to read and understand the document. So one of the biggest questions I have oh, this is great. I'd like to be able to save this document. Well, our argument generally is you probably would not want to save this document, even though machine translations come a long way. It's still not a substitute for professional translation. So unless there is very little context in the document, so let's say it was an invoice with very little text that doesn't change. Sure, we could add a button there that you could create and save as. Again, keep in mind, you're going to be creating a new record when you do that. But typically, we just use this to understand the document. So other questions common questions that we get is we have companies that want to capture OCR and translate into multiple languages on the fly or even post. And our argument generally is, again, keep in mind that you're going to be creating new records for every one of those languages. And two, again, is that document, going to be translated well enough to be public facing? And generally, it's not. Certainly, if there's a lot of context. So our argument is to not do that. Don't create the new records. You simply can keep the document in its source language and then leverage the OpenText Translator module, where you're still able to search those documents. You're still able to view the documents if you needed to view them. And when you're in the UI, you can still see those documents. Those documents are still being surfaced. Now, to kind of skip ahead on the roadmap for future releases, we are looking to add at this point a business workflow to kick off professional translation workflow. So let's say in this case you did need this document. You're like, yeah, you know what? We're going to need this document in English. So at this point, you could send this document to maybe, it would be configurable to either, let's say you had an internal publishing department, you could send it to that based on its language, or let's say that you didn't have a German in-house translator. Well, maybe that gets kicked off to OpenText Translation Services or your partner for professional translations, like RWS, for example, which is a company that we work with quite a bit. And then they could translate it, and then you would have a new version in a different language. So some of the other things that we've applied translation to and multilingualization to is workflows. So you can create workflow in different languages. So a user can create a workflow in, let's say, English, and then a French user can take over that same workflow and start working in French and read any of the content that the English users put into the workflow in French. So they're only working in their language. And let's say they could kick that off again, and then it gets passed on to someone in, let's say, Hong Kong again, and they're working in Chinese. So even though the first two are in English and French, the third user in Chinese working in Chinese, and only Chinese able to view the first two steps of that workflow in Chinese, even though they were created in English and French. So that's huge for international collaboration. Certainly, it's increased now with a lot of remote, the way remote workforces with with COVID in the last few years. So we do see a lot more interest in that capabilities as well. Some of the new things that we've added. So the biggest change that we've added is the extended ECM for Salesforce. For those of you who are familiar with Salesforce, a user can now work in, let's say, so an English user is working in a Salesforce UI, and they're using extended ECM for open text, so that they have the widget that's on the Salesforce App Exchange, and then all of their content server content is now in the tabbed environment within Salesforce. So they never have to leave the Salesforce environment. All of their content is accessible through Salesforce. And they ran into issues as well, where if you had in a multilingual environment within that tabbed OpenText environment, you're going to run into the same issue that we just showed you here. So with our module installed, it is included now with our product. A French user would be working in a completely French Salesforce UI. That tabbed extend ECM for Salesforce environment is going to be in French, and then all of their content server information is going to be in French and only French. So we're able to facilitate user adoption and language compliance within Salesforce as well. We are looking to extend that to SAP. We do have the connector built. We're still in the midst of testing, but we hope to have that released sometime this year or early next year. If you do have any immediate need for that, you can reach out to me and we can look to see if we can fast track that. It is really what we need is a test bed just for testing, but it has been built. And then we are looking at some of the other SAP success factors, S4 HANA as well, on our roadmap for the future. And then other than that, we've pretty much extended any area you can think of that you can extend language capabilities. So reporting, you can create reports in your language and only your language. News items, if you have a company that still uses those. Any of the areas that we've been able to extend, we have. Some of the other big changes to the product, of course, is the pricing model that I mentioned. So I think we do have some OpenText team on this call. So we do have 2 new SKUs for our product, because we have changed the pricing model from a per user to a per instance. So for those of you who may have had some opportunities for our product or our partners or OpenText sales, and now is an excellent time to revisit, because it is significantly more attractive, certainly for larger deployments of content server. We just found that it wasn't scaling well when we had a large amount of users, and we decided and it was kind of confusing too, because we had tiers based on volume, and we just made it simply easier for everyone. So easier for the partners, easier for the account executives for OpenText, and easier for our customers to understand too. And we also ran into the issue with the introduction of the extended ECM features. We really needed to license the entire deployment, whereas before we were able to kind of license maybe a subset of users, but we were running into issues where the subset would have access to the translation features, but those that didn't have license would still see the features, but they were running into like the NAGware prompts where please contact your administrator to get a license, and we didn't want to continue with that either. So I'll open up the floor to any questions. the language compliance tool that we have. If you or your team would like a specific or a one-on-one demo, I'd be more than happy to connect with you and give you a personal tour of the product. But if you have any questions, please let me know. You can put them in chat. I'll answer them now. Otherwise, my session is fairly quick today. Again, we'll be recording it. I am recording it. I will be uploading this to YouTube as well as our OT Solix Partners website. And for those of you that are going to be visiting some of the other sessions today, there are quite a few more today. I'm the second in line today. It is 7 in the morning here, but there are quite a few. So we have Wartime Global presenting in the half an hour with their Guardian tool. Okay, if there's not any more questions, I'm going to stop sharing and I'm going to stop recording. If you have any questions you wanted to ask and not be recorded, you can certainly do that as well.